Okay.
Thank you, Malcolm, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this event. Um, is social action is just very appropriate subject nowadays. So social action for the Sikhs comes in many forms, from celebrations to natural disasters, from pandemics to protest. Sikhs know how to put their faith into practice and how to serve people relentlessly and selflessly. Across the globe, the Sikh community has been working very hard to help those in need, and their role has doubled up in the recent past. Whilst the world fights the coronavirus pandemic, the Sikhs have been helping people not only overcome hunger, but with humanitarian crises around the world. It's their devotion and it's their love, which is born out of their faith, that gives them the strength to carry on serving the humanity. The founder of the Sikh faith, Guru Nanak's teachings are practiced in three ways. Remember God at all time, make an honest living without exploitation, and sharing with those in need and with those who have less than yourselves. This is the foundation of the concept and practice of langar, free kitchen, which we all know, which takes place in all gurdwaras and now in outreach provision, as COVID-19 has placed many challenges for the less fortunate and the vulnerable. Through langar or community kitchen in the gurdwaras and beyond its walls, the Sikhs ensure no one in their environment goes hungry or goes to sleep on empty stomach. Free Kitchen was designed to uphold the principle of equality between all humankind, regardless of religion, caste, color, creed, age, gender, or social status. It expresses the ethics of sharing, community inclusiveness, and oneness of all humankind. And there is a line I would like to read here, which my brother Harkirat will know. It's part from Sukhmani Sahib, Prabh ki jyot sagal kat sohe, which means the light of God is in all hearts. The other thing is important in Sikh faith is equality, which is everywhere in the Sikh faith. The promotion of equality has been a distinguished feature of the Sikh faith. And some of the quotes from the Holy Scripture, Guru Granth Sahib Ji, in the Japji Sahib, Guru Nanak says, accept all humans as your equals and let them be your only sect. And the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, promoted the principles of recognize all humankind as single caste of humanity. Manas ki jaat sabbe eko pehchan, eke pehchan bo. Recently, we will have seen the collaboration between the local authorities and the faith groups has dramatically increased during the pandemic. There was a report last year, Keeping the Faith report commissioned by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Faith and Society, highlighted that 11% of local authorities said that they had been working with gurdwaras, which is langar in Sikh gurdwaras. 11% of the local authorities said that. In Preston, all the three gurdwaras have been working very hard, providing food for the needy, for anyone, homeless people, universities to overseas students, NHS, fire brigade, ambulance people, and recently with schools as well. I don't know whether any of you, I'm sure my brother Harkirit will know definitely Khalsa Aid. Khalsa Aid is a well-recognized organization. This is a Sikh charity, was founded in 1999. It's an organization with the aim to provide humanitarian aid in disaster areas and civil conflict zones around the world. Again, based on the Sikh principle of recognize the whole human race as one. And they have worked all around the world, from Indonesia, earthquake to tsunami relief, Kerala flood relief, Congolese refugee response, and Syria, Afghanistan, you name it. Where there is a need, they get there. Most recently, they delivered almost 2,000 hot meals to the stranded lorry drivers in Kent with the help from Kent Gurdwara. The whole world Sikh community is standing up for social and political injustice, such as farmers' protest currently in India, Delhi. I think you will know what's happening there. And they are there as well, fighting and supporting the fighting against the government and supporting the. We actually around April there's a special festival, Baisakhi, which is a very important festival in our Sikh calendar. And we get a message from Prince Charles every year, which is quite heartwarming, and it's good that the royal family and everybody's recognizing your role in the community. And I'm just going to read this this paragraph from his video, which he released last year, Baisakhi time. In these challenging times, the Sikh community is making an extraordinary and invaluable contribution to the life of this country and to so many others, just as it has always done. That's my bit. Thank you.
You can breathe a sigh of relief now. We'll take questions after all the presentations, but thank you. That's wonderful. It's lovely to hear those words, the oneness of mankind, a theme which is very dear to Baha'i hearts, and which is so becoming integral now in people's thinking. So without further ado, can we turn to next is Hindu, Kailash. Would you share with us your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for inviting me today. Like all the religions, Hinduism is about unity, working together and serving others. There's a saying in Hinduism which is called Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which means the world is one family. So Hindus believe very much in we are one big family. There's no discrimination, with color, race, religion, background. We're all human beings at the end of the day and one big family. Hindus believe that they have a moral responsibility to act in the right way and to make choices that are helpful to everyone. If a Hindu follows their personal dharma, and dharma is a way of life, it's the righteous way of life, then the dharma within the Hinduism, they can make the right choices that are morally correct. Hindus are encouraged to act with empathy, love and humility at all times so that they are doing the right thing. They should try to show empathy through considering how others are feeling and how they would feel if they were in the same situation. They should then try to do the things that help others. They should try to show love to others in a compassionate and caring way through giving help when needed. This might be giving to charity or giving to those who do not have enough food or water. They should try to do all the things with humility, which means not doing things in a boastful way, but for the right reasons. For example, they should help somebody because the person needs help, not in order to feel good about themselves. Now, it's a good example of working together, during the pandemic was there was a national initiative, and I just want to quote some of the work that's been going on, both nationally and also locally in Preston. So the national initiative, which is from the BAPS Eastern Temple, was the Connect and the Care program, launched back in March 2020 to help communities across London and the UK, especially the elderly and the vulnerable who were adversely affected by the pandemic. The focus was to mitigate emotional and social isolation by connecting with them via telephone calls and then providing a custom care package which included freshly cooked meals, groceries, and medication, using a dedicated team of 1,100 volunteers. A series of health awareness videos in English and Gujarati, as well as parenting toolkits, were also created. This is in addition to the daily services and weekly assemblies and regular programs webcasted live, on the TVs in people's homes. There was also like there's like a lunchbox called tiffin that was freshly cooked every day and delivered as well. And this Connect and Care was also kind of served locally in Preston to families through the temple. Both Gujarat Hindu Centre, they did a fantastic job of serving the elderly, the luncheon clubs, reaching out, helping, shopping. So and phone calls, making sure everybody's okay. And so this was like the first-hand example of the community, the unity, the caring that we kind of work together in helping each other. So those are the kind of Hindu values, the common values that all religions kind of coming together. So I just wanted short and sweet, but this is how we put our values and our teaching into practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's my great pleasure to call on Izzy to say a few words as someone belonging to the Jewish community and get his perceptions and observations on this topic. Over to you, Izzy.
Hi all. Hi, good evening. Firstly, thank you, Savannah, for suggesting me to Malcolm. Thank you. So Savannah and I actually belong to quite distinct Jewish communities. I grew up in a quite insular Jewish community that's quite closed from the wider Jewish community. It's called often called the Haredi community or the strictly Orthodox community. So I just want to make it clear that there are many Jewish communities who have quite different ways of life. So I'll talk a bit about my native community, but it won't represent how Jeremy and Savannah's community will be. So maybe they can talk a bit, maybe later in the questions, they can talk a bit the wider Jewish community. So the community that I grew up in is very, very focused on social action and on helping each other. It's a community with very big families and quite significant poverty levels. So everyone is mobilized into helping each other, and it's a community in which everyone has responsibility to look after each other. There's not really much individualism. It's more community spirit, which also goes to answer Malcolm's initial question of to what extent are religions expected to fulfill the gaps in the welfare system. And I think communities know their own situation better than the government knows their situation, and communities do rise up and fill that gap. And definitely in my community, that's the case. So for example, because it's a community where mothers have lots of children, there's lots of community organizations that will provide support. So there's, for example, a mother and baby home that's highly subsidized. Often if somebody can't afford, then it'll be free for them, where they can just go after childbirth. The mother can go and live there for a week, away from her other 10 children who are running around, so she can get some rest. teenage girls in the community will go around to their neighbors and family and look after children so the mothers can get rest. There's even a first responder system in the community called Hatsula, which is paramedics trained, and they arrive faster than the NHS ambulances. So when in a family with lots of kids, maybe a kid has fell down the stairs or a kid has cut themselves, there's always first responders. They're there free and help the community. There's also the community also has an organization called Chavarium, which means in Hebrew friends, and they are there for if you have any kind of emergency, non-medical emergency, like a plumbing emergency or your car broke down, you can just call them and they'll be there for free, no charge. They'll just help you. If a community member will fall on hard times, there's people called askunim, which means activists, and they will mobilize money overnight. They will raise hundreds of thousands of pounds to help someone in need, whether it's somebody needs help with marrying off a child, or someone needs help with a medical emergency, or even just with day-to-day life. So the community will be there and will support its members. And this is a very core value in Judaism. It's called tzedakah or tzedukah, which means justice or charity. So always being there to help others. Now in Corona as well, the community had quite high levels of coronavirus, and it's understandable because with large families and people running around, it was spreading easier. But the community mobilized, and what they did is they converted this mother and baby home I mentioned earlier, this home where mothers who have just given birth can come and stay. They've converted that into almost a kind of private hospital for COVID patients, where they've taken community members in the community, community members who were sick with COVID and needed special treatment, put them in this place with oxygen tanks and special care, all for free. And this is at the time when the NHS was overwhelmed. So, if these people would have gone to the hospitals, who knows if they could have gotten this kind of special care. So yeah, I'll leave it here for now. I'm happy to take more questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing from others.
Great. Just before you go, Izzy, I'll let you off the hook. Does that community spirit, that is very intense, and does it extend into the wider community?
Sadly not. So I'll put on the table, I've left that community of my upbringing, and I'm happy to talk a bit more about it. I no longer identify as a Haredi Jew.
Yeah.
And I do struggle with kind of what elements of the faith of my upbringing to hold on to and whatnot. But yeah, this is one of the great disappointments I have in the community, that it's very good at showing kindness and compassion and charity towards community members, but it's not so good at looking outwards. And this is a result of being very, very insular. And obviously Jeremy and Savannah can tell you a bit more about the wider Jewish community, which is much more outwards looking and much more willing to extend kindness and to others as well. Thank you.
Andy, you're next. If you would share with us your experiences and your views and perspective on this difficult topic. Or maybe.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask Izzy, how do I join this gang? Because they were everything they were doing seemed fantastic. And Malcolm, you've asked my question, and it's been answered. Yeah, as a Christian, obviously we're following the teaching of Jesus, and we believe God came looking for us first in sending us Jesus. So we should always be outward looking, never inward looking. We should always be looking outwardly and making the first steps if need be, not waiting for someone to come and ask help. You're probably aware that the state school system was really set up by the churches. Lots of different ones: Baptist schools, Methodist schools, Catholic schools, Church of England schools, over 200 years ago, because basically the rich people got to go to school And in fact, a lot of those were set up for the sons and daughters of the clergy, because that history of the priests being the readers and writers had continued for many years. So a lot of our public schools, Eton, for instance, was set up as a charitable school, would you believe, to let people in with a Christian ethos. Rossall's school was set up for the children of clergy, but our main schools, our main public schools, were set up through the churches. And then over the years, that responsibility has been handed on to the state for a number of different reasons. But it was the Christian community that set those up for the benefit of those who couldn't get to these public schools. And in fact, Sunday schools were just that. They were schools on a Sunday when young people might even be working in the factories, because people went to work at a very early age. In fact, my father was working at a coal mine at the age of 13 back in the early 1930s. So this continued. Young working went on for ages. The probation service was set up by Christians. It used to be called the Christian Probation Service, and eventually that was handed over to the state. So I'm interested in Malcolm's bigger question about, should everything be done by the state? I personally don't think so. And within this COVID situation, I think we've all seen all the faiths mucking in really well. In fact, a lot of interfaith chitter-chatter has been fairly pleasant over the years that I've been involved in, but not a great deal practical, if I have to be honest. In this last year, I've seen immense cooperation and immense practical help being offered across. All of us have been involved in trying to look after the university students over the summer last year when they were stuck for food. And virtually every single one of the faiths that I know of in Preston are helping to supply and work with various food providers, whether they're food banks or food markets. We run a food market from the church car park at the moment. It's not specifically a Christian food market at all, because we have loads of volunteers that don't have any faith and some that do have some faith, but actually they all want to be there to try and help somebody else. I suppose the main Christian teaching around helping someone else comes from that story that Jesus tells when somebody says, how on earth do I get to heaven? And he says, well, you have to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your strength and all your mind. And you have to love your neighbour as yourself. And of course, this man then says to Jesus, well, who's my neighbour then? And Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, doesn't he? Which is anyone that's in need. Not just someone who lives near you, obviously. So, yeah, the Christian teaching is very much focused, and that is a big reminder to us all. I think it's absolutely brilliant that Jesus tells this story, and he doesn't tell it like the disciples are being really good and go and help this injured man. He doesn't say, well, I would have gone and helped this injured man. He actually chooses someone from another race and another faith to go and help this injured man and to be an example to all of us. I always find that an incredible parable of his that he tells to try and encourage us to reach out to others. The situation in Preston, and I mentioned the cathedral being used as a vaccination centre. For over a year now, I've been writing to politicians, to the Archbishop of Canterbury, to say, why doesn't the government use these fantastic faith premises? They're virtually all empty. They're all clean. They've got stacks of volunteers that have all been DBS, and they know what they're about. They know the building. And why don't you use them? And so it's not been my pushing that's done this. I've tried with our Prime Minister, I say with our Archbishop of Canterbury, with the leaders in Lancashire, and it's gradually filtering through that people have realised the strength and the power of our faith communities. And I think across the nation, every single faith, some faith premises is being used, as well as cricket clubs and sports arenas. But when you think there's virtually none of us meeting in congregation at the moment, we have some really viable premises that can be used to bless other people, to look after them. And it's not just the jab. I don't know if any of you have been for a jab, but what we find about our food market is actually social contact. Someone is able to say, good to see you today. How are you getting on? Do you need any more help with anything? And all that's, people talk about that social contact, that smile, because we're all getting a bit distant. I mean, these Zoom meetings are great, but they don't replace actually seeing and talking to someone, do they? So yeah, I think this this crisis has pulled lots and lots of people together, and it's given a bit of a kick in the backside to the Christian community as well. Say, come on, get on and do stuff. Yeah, and lots of people across all faiths and no faiths are joining in and helping others. So I'm very grateful. But yeah, the wider question, Malcolm, I'm looking forward to the conversation on that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. That was very helpful. Sadly, we've not got a Buddhist rep here with us tonight, but I did ask Gem Pagpa if he would join us, and unfortunately he's teaching a meditation class tonight. But I thought I'd just read out, before I go on to my presentation, something he said. I found it quite surprising, and I was really sorry he couldn't make it to put it himself. This expression, I'll just read it out to you. He said, thanks for the invitation to speak. I don't think I have anything to offer you. Unfortunately, as some Buddhist traditions espouse the importance of social action, they call it engaged Buddhism, but my tradition doesn't engage in social action. There are many wonderful charities who are materially helping the disadvantaged sectors of society and who are doing the important job much better than we could. We see our job as helping people develop peaceful minds. So I wouldn't really have anything to say. Very humble in a way, but I thought also very interesting perspective. And so when we come to have our discussion, we might just bear that in mind, that people of a religious tradition could, in a sense, cut themselves off from social action and say that is the problem for charities and for the state. So coming to a Baha'i perspective now, I'm just going to break with tradition here and just share screen for my little talk. If we could go to the right, so social action, being and doing. So as with other people here tonight, Baha'is believe that it's not just the teachings that we give liberally and universally, but you know, when it comes to helping others, we also believe in an indiscriminatory fashion of helping other people. Baha'is, like our friends in other faiths, believe human beings are fundamentally spiritual beings created by an all-loving sorry, I'm just going to enlarge that. Yes, so that people are fundamentally spiritual beings created by an all-loving creator to know him and to worship him. We see as Baha'is two great forces in the world, broadly speaking. The forces of destruction, which seem capricious, which in fact we believe are working to tear down barriers to world unity and harmony. And also, the other hand, creative forces, those led by the power of unity and universal love, that sees only the oneness of humanity, as Hardit was saying, and others too. We're more and more, we just see oneness now. The destructive forces, no one escapes. cataclysmic means of destruction, whether it's climate change, pandemics, terrorism, war. Can you imagine being faced with that? I think that's such a dramatic photograph, a seething mass of humanity fleeing destruction. And of course, one of the consequences of war is famine. Now, social change is much more than a project that one group of people carries out for the benefit of another. Jeremy will recognize this straight away. This is one of the Calais projects, which he, as a Jewish rep and a Christian and Muslims, got together under the aegis of Preston Faith Forum to carry, it was a short-term project in which they went over to Calais to share with the camp there supplies. In a sense, for Jeremy, these must be quite mournful pictures to view. Whilst being able to help, it must have been overwhelming at times. Access to knowledge is the right of every human being, and participation in its generation, application, and diffusion a responsibility that all must shoulder in the great enterprise of building a prosperous world civilization, each individual according to his or her talents and abilities. Justice demands universal participation. While social action may involve the provision of goods and services, as here, in some form to repair the damage inflicted on society by these forces, its primary concern needs be to build capacity within a given population and effect social transformation. So here I'm distinguishing between social action and social transformation, social change. Remedial action, while needed, is a sticking plaster, as I'm sure Jeremy would agree, compared to the action required to spiritualize humanity. Baha'u'llah in his writings asks, is not the object of every revelation to effect a transformation in the whole character of mankind, a transformation that shall manifest itself both outwardly and inwardly, that shall affect both its inner life and external conditions. Now, there are different levels of complexity, from the small clean up the park. Here's many small activities going on by different communities around the Baha'i world. And so they can be a small limited project, but right up to large scale projects, as again was referred to by Hadi, massive organizations that are inspired by their faith. So I'm going to, the first point here about coherence between spiritual and material, I'm going to come back to at the end. But for the moment, I just want to look at the Baha'i learning in action, which is study, consultation, and action after reflection. So a few words about consultation. Fundamental to any consultation really is love and harmony. So often when people come together, it's either forced upon them because of war or trying to solve a major falling out of some kind, either between nations or communities. But if we can come together in this spirit of oneness and humanity that has been referred to, with love and harmony, seeing only oneness, then we can start on a better footing. But even when the starting point is some disagreement, it can, if done in the right spirit, be a starting point to search for truth. And so good consultation where people put their points of view on the table and become detached from them and seek the spark of truth from differing opinions can all be to the good. even though we start off from different points of view. And good consultation will always be channeled into action, purposeful action. So by acting in unity, we are in a much better position to proceed in an orderly process. For Baha'is, unity is more important than being right, because as long as you're united, if your course of action is later shown to be wrong, it can be corrected. Whereas if you're in a state of disunity and undermining other people's decisions, then that is harmful. As Andy will say from the Christian writings, a city divided against itself will fall, and even a nation for that matter. So now looking towards the centrality of knowledge, it was only a few days ago in The Guardian that Mashkoura Begum wrote in an article about the depth of BAME health inequality. These few words here, I don't know if you can all read the top there, but very few ethnic minorities, she said, are involved in the design, discussion or delivery of the service they are service users of. Language barrier is used as a common factor. However, in reality, there is a cultural inertia by their health leaders to make the necessary changes, talking about ingrained attitudes there. And so she's bringing out this point I'm trying to make, that knowledge, for it to be helpful, everybody has to generate it and participate in the generation of it. Capacity building. For Baha'is, we have something called the Training Institute, which isn't dissimilar to any of the other faiths, really. Most of the other faiths that are represented here will see in these elements of devotional worship, children's classes and junior youth activities, study of the Word of God. They will see in their own faith too these same processes, which are in a sense the powerhouse of our social action, our aim of social change, to build vibrant communities. And I've already referred to degrees of complexity, and here are just some Baha'i institutions that are Baha'i inspired around the world, working in different areas of health, education, and small businesses, setting up those. Baha'u'llah said that the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. And that's what we're working for, is this unity. And he said that this unity can never be achieved as long as the counsels of the pen of the Most High have been revealed and suffered to pass unheeded. So for people of religion, the Word of God is fundamental in achieving unity in their own communities, as well as trying to effect wider transformation in the world outside. Thank you. So now, if you'd like to unmute yourself, I'd like to throw it open to people to ask questions and add their own experiences and comments. You can either use the raise hand, if you know how to do that, by going into your participants, I think it is, and using the raise hand there, or you can do it just by Jeremy just did and raising his hand. So over to you all now to ask questions and add your comments. And Jeremy, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. I just wanted to maybe mention a couple of differences between our traditions within Judaism compared with Izzy's, if that's any help to you. We're so very different, and I think our understanding of the tradition that Izzy comes from, we probably have as little understanding of that as non-Jews do, apart from the fact we share the same book and an ancient language, and some of the teachings, the actual ways of life are strikingly different, even the first language. So in Preston, we're liberal. In Manchester, we're reform. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the word of God and spirituality. Well, we pay a lot of lip service to that, but to quote a whole string of reform rabbis, why bring God into religion? We're not that excited about it, I think. Many of us are devout and they have a spiritual sense, but we're there for cultural reasons. I think we do have some sort of a belief, but we try not to articulate it too often. We are very much there for social justice, very much. And we do like our teachings about that. And wherever they came from, God-given or not, we feel them passionately. So we tzedakah, that is the one thing that we have in common that Izzy mentioned. And you know your passage from Micah, those who know what we call the Torah, the Old Testament. Our job is to do justice and walk humbly with our God. Well, we do the first half and we think about the second half on that one. How do we do that? Well, I love the saying from, I think it's one of our rabbis was, I want you to tell us the whole Torah while standing on one leg. Do I have to? All right, don't do anything which is hateful to your neighbor. The rest is commentary, but you must go away and learn it. So that's another way of putting help your neighbor. Don't do anything hateful to them. But it's not too active. The active side comes from tzedakah, and we have other traditions. Hillel said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I for? If not now, when? And we have a tradition called tikkun olam, where we need to go out and heal or repair the world. Now, when it comes to how good we are at this, I actually like the Christian Bible on this one. It's not our tradition at all, but I love it anyway. When it comes to prophets, by their fruits shall ye know them. So do we get on with it? We do. There's a lot of charities in the world which are founded by Jews. In this country, we have Amnesty International, and the Samaritans were founded by Jews. The humanist movement was a Jewish foundation, oddly enough, the leaders in that. But when it comes to social action and charity, Jews don't tend to get involved in that wearing their Jewish t-shirt and hat. We just do it because we're impassioned and we're normally stuck into politics, science, any other charity. And the fact that we're Jewish is what motivates us rather than the label or the badge we wear on our t-shirt. And we like to think that we have a lot of expression in those departments. And certainly in the lockdown, in the pandemic, a lot of our people have been involved in the science. You'll have seen well, you probably won't know actually, most of the vaccines in the world have had Jewish scientists and developers in the hand. There isn't one that you can take, I don't think, that hasn't got some Jewish influence somewhere. So we like to get involved. How do we respond to the present pandemic? Well, we've been the first to take the practical and scientific advice. We haven't been met at all. It's been very depressing, but we'll certainly look forward to getting back to things when it's all opened up again. That's essentially, I would say, our difference in the traditions that Izzy's been talking about. But I hope that's not been unfair to that tradition. Anyway, that was what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Dave Zollis has got to go, sadly, but Dave was actually going to step into Andy's role and give the Christian point of view, but Andy, the meeting got cancelled, so he was able to take it up again. So Dave, sorry, you're going to have to go.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to go to another meeting about how churches use the vaccination. But I've been working with Faith Action as an associate over the last 8 months, and what I've seen in all faiths is amazing work, where it doesn't matter what faith you are, joined together, working alone. It is been humbling to listen to the stories and the life-changing work that we do in our own faiths or faiths together. The key thing for me is, how do we shine this light on what we do? How do we shine the light on all the good stuff we do in around this darkness? Because what we keep needing, and the argument for me in Faith Action has been, if we can get government to invest in social action through faith, the rewards are huge and the response is huge. And I think the country trusts faith organisations slightly more than they do the government. But we won't get to that because this is being recorded and you never know where I'll end up in Grand Tenement.
I can always
really have, because just tonight, in everything we've heard, and Izzy, there's a Jewish community on Canvey Island in Essex where I live, and they've been really hard to engage with and stuff like that, but have kept out, kept going, kept the communication going. So no matter how hard it is as a community, I think what's been amazing with COVID is that people have reached out. So if I can leave that with you, I'm really sorry because I love this stuff. But I hope to see you all again. Please stay safe, yeah? And thank you, Malcolm. You're an absolute gentleman.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Godspeed. Yeah, I mean, Oxfam, a Christian organisation, has this saying, don't they, that give a person a fish and you feed them for a day, and teach them to fish and you sort them out for life, kind of thing. And in most of the religions represented here, in some senses, feel beleaguered in a world that is now sort of, well, at the next census will be well over half people don't have any religion. They're either atheist, humanist, or agnostic, or just don't care about religion at all. So in a sense, we're all feeling beleaguered and trying to promote our shrinking communities in some senses. Young people don't seem to have the same time for religion. And that's the nub of what I'm trying to address here, is when we feel beleaguered like this, we're still trying to, in a sense, deliver a very big service. We mentioned all the numbers of meals going out and everything, and it's being carried by a small burden of people, and there isn't this universal participation sometimes in our own communities, let alone the wider community. So Greg, I'm glad you've joined us. If you can hear me, just before you joined us at the beginning of the meeting, are you there, Greg? If you could just pop your video on, I think. Hiya, welcome.
Malcolm, can I just interject, and can you let Sharu have a say because she has to go in 5 minutes?
I will do, yeah. All right, I'll come back to you, Greg, if you don't mind. Sharu.
Penny, that's so sweet of you, but I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say I've enjoyed it very much. I've loved the fantastic contributions people have made. And I do believe that most people of faith actually are very concerned about the pandemic and will make their contribution. They don't even need to be asked. And I think the majority of our community and our people, wherever we live, wherever we come from, whatever faith or no faith backgrounds, we actually care about our neighbors. And that's why it's so wonderful that all the faiths actually talk about the neighbor and care, to show care and concern and love. And that's why every time I listen to other people speaking, I just think, yeah, we all have a lot in common. And I'm so proud that that is how humanity actually functions. It's so sad that some people let themselves down. So thank you very much for letting me join, and I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll meet again sometime soon. I'll stay on to listen to Greg, and then I will go. Thank you, Penny.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. So Greg, as I said before you joined us, it was one of your postings of a Guardian article that sort of inspired this meeting, really. I know in St. Matthew's you have the Eden Project going, don't you? And it's about this problem, if you want to call it that, of trying to sustain social action, let alone social change and transformation, with fewer and fewer people. Wonder if you'd like any comments to make.
I mean, that indeed is an issue.
You're a bit muted. Can you come a bit nearer your microphone?
Do much other than take the microphone right down and then you probably won't be able to see me very well, or you'll get a very distorted picture. Is that better if I speak like that?
Yes, you're coming through louder now. Yeah.
You'll see the bottom of my beard, and that's all I'm afraid. Yeah, the problem across the Christian churches in particular is the aging nature of congregations and commitments. So up until recently, we've had a large number of older retired people who are committed to the church and committed to doing the social action. So a lot of our volunteers in our food markets, our job clubs, our mother and toddler clubs, our youth activities at St Matthew's have been people 65, 70 or even older, and they're getting older every year. It is not easy within Christianity and within the secular world that we live to replace those volunteers. Some churches are a bit different. There are churches with a younger profile, and particularly if you go to the big cities, the churches in London, for example, have large numbers of young people. But up here in Preston, we struggle with that one. One of the reasons, therefore, is that we're hoping to raise what we call an even team of young people who are committed to come and live and work with us. That's a long-term aim. At the moment, of course, during the lockdown period, we're limited to what we can do. We do, as Andy does through St Stephen's and the community here, we do some food market work. We do a lot of basic pastoral caring, mainly through phone calls, etc. But that's about all that we can do at the moment. We'd like to do more. Resources are always a problem. We do have a bit of a partnership with our local church primary school, which does help because there's some more resource that comes in through them. But it ain't easy. I don't know how that compares with other faith communities. My impression is that Muslim communities are younger. I'm not so sure about Sikhs and Hindus. I'm not so sure about the Jewish community. But, so the age issue is an important one if we want to maintain the work that we're doing and maybe take up more. Is that okay? Anything else?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Anybody else like to come in? Yes, Savannah.
Hi. I just wanted to contribute what Andy was saying before when you said that you've written to government or the leaders to say, we have these beautiful churches and space, why don't you use them? Just on that point, I've been working with Preston Faith Forum and Hello Preston with the Syrian refugees since they arrived the first time. We went to the Ashton Methodist Church and we did the welcome there, and we've been working, helping them with English, teaching English, learning the language and playing with the kids and all that. Gradually the numbers started going down because a lot of people just didn't feel comfortable going to the church, simply because it's a church. So maybe about 18 months ago, when we tried to organize more English lessons, I was asked, will it be in the church? And they were always very polite, but then they started going to the community centers. So there is that element why perhaps people don't want to use it. It's like if you say, okay, come to our synagogue to learn English, or there is that element of faith, I feel. And also when we've had the Interfaith Week, this is the year before the COVID, I went around Preston College handing out leaflets to say, please come and join us, because I thought that would be interesting for young people. And the moment it says Preston Faith Forum of Lancashire Faith, or the word faith, they're saying nothing to do with religion, I'm not coming. And then I said, it's not about religion, it's about debate, discussion, lots of interesting things. Basically what I was trying to promote, Izzy will know, is a limud kind of, it's more about learning. But the word faith really puts people off. They don't want to come.
Andy, you want to respond?
Yeah, appreciate Savannah's views on that. My experience has been totally the opposite. People don't have any issue with coming into any of the, unless you're an Orthodox Jew or into church premises. A lot of the times it's church halls that are being used, which aren't used for worship anyway. And also my experience of Preston's College is, because I go in once a year to present on interfaith issues, is the best students, without a doubt, are the hairdressers, because they know that they've got to be able to engage their clients, and they know that faith is important. They were absolutely brilliant to talk to. The ones who were a bit, as Savannah says, oh, nothing to do with me, I can't be bothered, tend to be the car mechanics and the like. But those who actually were hands-on, the hairdressers got it straight away. No, it's really important. I must be able to talk to people. I must be able to listen to understand. And when I was promoting faith premises, I wasn't just promoting the church. What I'm trying to say is virtually every faith premise has some sort of hall to it or community centre that can be used. So I was trying to promote on behalf of us all. But yeah, no, we hold our food market in the church car park. We've had to move from the school for more social distancing, but our clientele is 30% Muslim, 30% Hindu, and 30% any other faith.
Savannah?
I was going to say, Penny, we found the man who will promote Preston Faith Forum next year. He's your man.
Yeah.
Hardy, you mentioned the Langar, and I wonder, although it's open to all, do you tend to see the same faces?
Well, yeah, it is. It's open to all, and I know when you invite people, you have to invite people, like we did on Interfaith. Can you remember last year? But people, perhaps they're not aware of that there is a Gurdwara there, or it's like lack of knowledge. Perhaps they don't know. It's that kind of thing. Perhaps you have like we are now reaching out to people. I mean, this I know something good will come out of this pandemic situation. Like we are meeting people and we are doing Zoom calls, and I've learned so much from joining in the Lancashire Faith Forum as well. It's like educating people in the community yourself. And going back to Andy's point about his experience totally opposite, that's how I feel in my neighborhood. When I talk to them about the Zoom meetings and faith meetings and all that, they want to join in as well. So I'm talking to them and I'm asking them to come to the Gurdwara. This is what's happened in our Gurdwara, kind of thing. So it's like reaching out to people. And I know I take your point that it's always the same people come to Gurdwara. They know, every Sunday you go. But we have to make the effort of, like all of us, if we do that, then, perhaps if we can bring people, more people into the communities.
And is that the same experience for you, Kailash? Does your community, I know that you have, you put on meals, especially for the elderly, don't you, at the Gujarat Centre? Is it all the same people, or are you trying to sort of reach out into the wider community?
Yeah, in terms of the luncheon club, that's been offered at the Gujarat Hindu Centre, and mostly the families around in the community, they get invited, and it's the same kind of club, and obviously new members do join. However, with this Connect and Care one, the initiative that the BAPS Mandir has obviously been actively involved, we have had a wide range of families, we've been reaching out to. Like Andy said, we've been collectively helping those students, new class students, with obviously food during, Ramadan, as well as, they've been struggling. Also, sort of charities, homeless charities, and so reaching out those who can't physically come during the, obviously, this COVID business happening. We're actually going out and reaching out those in need, and we're working closely with the council as well on this.
Penny, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I suppose I was just sort of thinking of sort of faith and state, and if my history sort of serves me right, and I'm no academic, as you all know, that so much was done actually by the church, good deeds, if you will. I mean, all the Lord Shaftesbury's, Lord Lever, all of them, all had that sort of religious sort of, calling, if you will, to see the plight of the poor and do something about it. And in some ways, the state divorced itself from God. So it was like sort of, you got this branch, if you will, of faith, which was faith, and then state, which ended up sort of becoming sort of, let's leave God out of it. It's too complicated, so let's leave God out of it. And I see so many, we watched a fascinating program the other day about sort of children that have sort of taken over, what was it, Malcolm, the seaweed or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what the product was at the bottom of the sea. But, they each took an animal, like, I want to protect the dolphin and I want to protect and they did got in touch with government and made a massive sort of change in terms of how that area was used, and gave it back to nature, if you will, having taken it away with shipping and nets and things. And I see so many wonderful things that young people do. They just don't want the word God, faith, religion, or anything like that attached to it, but they are doing it. And I guess in a way, it's a convergence of the two. We talk about good deeds, and good deeds are phenomenal and fantastic, but having that sort of spark of faith, authorship, if you will, which obviously everything comes from God, then that convergence of the two, is light upon light. And it's creating that connection. I mean, my son, is an absolute atheist, totally sort of believes that science creates everything. And, there is really very little, no need for God, or, unless you happen to be mum and dad and they happen to need it. So, and it's in a way sort of trying to help them to see that everything comes from God. Every single thing that has ever happened has come forth from God. And I guess that's the bit really of how do you bring that state and state and faith together.
Yes, Harker, then Andy.
I'll say a few words, if I may. Thank you, firstly, for this invite. I've purposely not spoken, listening, admiring everything that's been shared. So thank you very much for this opportunity. What I will say is, in the time I've spent traveling to schools, working with children, representing my outward as well as my inward beliefs in action, what I'm learning is that words, titles like God come very weighted nowadays. They come with a preconception that something is very far. God is separate to me. And in this separation, I believe we, as human beings, have separated ourselves. We've got to go back to being united, as you've touched on, continue remaining united, more so, should I say, because we're all one. And we've all come from that one that same one resides within you and me. Somebody touched on the outward. Somebody touched on the inward. Well, maybe we have to go inside and clean the dirt that's in our mind, which tells us actually what we look like, what we call ourselves. We're weighing ourselves. We are trying to suggest possibly that we are better than you. What was touched on was places of worship. Are these just places of worship that we go to? Or is this body that we've been given this place of worship? Are we serving somebody because of what they look like or the publicity we want? We're confusing perhaps the dirt that's already inside us, and that dirt is what we need to cleanse. I will leave that as an open conversation, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Harkarat. Andy?
Satri Akal, Harkarat, that was, yeah, wise stuff. I don't know who said it, but the heart of the matter is the matter of the heart, isn't it? It's changing our hearts, whatever it is, to things. In terms of engaging with government, I think we had a long time when government didn't do God. There was public statements about that. And it's taken a while to turn that around. I think we're seeing at the moment that everyone is in this together and we all have to help one another, and that's been very clear. We're trying our little best in Preston with our faith covenant, which is trying to pull the local authority and the faiths together. I find it a little frustrating, to be honest, to this group here, in that it's still very one-sided. It's what the local authority want us to do. It's not a real proper partnership yet, but it's a step in the right direction. And I know Malcolm and Penny know all about what we're trying to get on with. So yeah, those sort of formal agreements to try and push understanding, because I think a lot of senior officials in government have sort of lost that understanding. And we're gradually losing people. I wonder, Malcolm, are we closing at past?
Yes, certainly no later. If people run out of contributions, then we can close sooner. Greg, is that what Andy just said? Is that your experience too, that you know, getting better relations slowly with government and local authorities?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's evidence in that survey that that faith report that came out from Faith Action that I did some work on that across the country, that because we're all in it together in this pandemic, there is more openness and more appreciation of what faith groups are doing. I don't think that on the whole local authorities want to talk about the content of faith. There's still some reluctance, although they're very well aware from the survey that that faith groups do not have a problem of proselytizing or imposing their views when they do social action. I think local government anyway has appreciated that. I think probably national government is too. Yeah, so there is some movement, certainly from 10-15 years ago when I was doing certain research on faith and urban regeneration and so on. There's a bit more openness. There are a number of local authorities, as Andy says, who've taken up the idea of a faith covenant. Not perfect, needs a lot of work on it, needs a lot of participation from faith communities and, what's the right word, agitation to persuade them to do the partnership stuff better. And there is really very little by way of funding, apart from a few emergency small grants that come in. But maybe it's better in some ways that there is not, because I think faith groups probably work best if they keep an independence. And if they can do useful stuff with their own resources, or by whatever charitable contributions they can bring in, so much the better. I think there's a danger of getting pulled in too much to the government agendas and so on. So yeah, that's my perspective. Yeah, an experience. Yeah, probably similar to Andy's. I'm a little bit more distant now because I've not been so active in the last couple of years since retirement, but except to the local level. But the general picture seems to be going that way.
Thank you. Penny, and I think after Penny, if no one else has anything to add, we'll close.
Well, I guess in a way the question is, you know, certainly we've had an opportunity this time that we've never ever had ever before, and that is where, and I wish Dave was here to continue that, because obviously Dave has done the focus groups and we are with the Jains and the Jains and Zoroastrians and the sort of Baha'is, and we have had as equal a say in being our thoughts being passed back to government as any other faith, the bigger faiths, you know. So as you know, it's not proportional representation. It's been, we've had exactly the same representation, if you will, and it's a shame sort of Dave's not here, because in a way he could actually answer this question better, you know, because my question is that the recognition from this pandemic that perhaps sort of God does play some kind of part in, you know, helping government, supporting government, and government in a way sort of, you know, needing those communities or needing that. You know, obviously we're all looking for hopeful things out of this pandemic, and is one of those the fact that, you know, there may be that recognition.
Thank you. Right, so I'll draw this meeting to a close and thank our guest speakers who are left, Hardeep and Andy. The others have had to leave. Thank you, Harkarat, for joining us all the way from, where was it again, sorry?
Northampton.
Northampton. The leather industry, if I remember my little triangle, leather, lace and something else in the Northampton. Very good. Okay, and thanks, Greg, again, because I know you do a lot of research on faith and social action, and it's been good having your contribution too. So thank you, everybody, Joy and Sylvia and